Good afternoon, everybody. This is Ronnie K. We're on the back step, and we got a couple of guests today, and we're live at FDIC, and we're having a great time here this year, as we normally do. The place is absolutely electric, and we'll welcome everybody in. So, gentlemen to my right, this is Eric Gablix. He's the superintendent of the National Fire Academy. Eric's welcome.
Thank you.
And, of course, the gentleman with the dull, bright orange shirt is Tommy A., my partner on the back step. Tommy, what's happening, brother?
Oh, so much. Where do I begin?
Start something.
We were talking earlier, and April is kind of a month of remembrance for me. But it's been 18 years, it's hard to believe, since firefighter Kevin Apuzio made the supreme sacrifice in Franklin Township, New Jersey. And another remembrance that I have out there is Blue Sheets. And it's been 31 years since Louis died in the line of duty, which kind of blew me away because I did the math. And if Lou hadn't made the supreme sacrifice, he'd be 82 years old right now. And I kept thinking, what would Lou Sheets be like at 82?
Right.
The word curmudgeon comes up every once in a while.
Yeah.
But I did a piece and I just posted it on my Facebook page talking about remembrances and hallowed ground. And between going back and forth between the academy last month and then up to Gettysburg for a while, both of those places very near and dear to my heart.
I hear you. Yes, interestingly enough, I kind of played a role at Kevin Apuzio's funeral. The Union County, New Jersey Chiefs put that whole thing together, and we had time because it was Easter week and Holy Week, so we had time until the funeral. So it was epic. It was huge. He was 21 years old. He was making a rescue, and as he got to the door buck, the whole basement went in, and he went down into the basement with his victim, with 4 other firefighters who got pulled out by the RIT team. But he succumbed. But yeah, I remember it vividly, step by step, what happened, and that week following. So time goes on.
When it's a small planet. I think I told you that Kevin's dad, I had met him at a wedding. My buddy Brian lives in Union, New Jersey. His daughter was getting married, but she went all through school with Kevin.
Huh.
And Dr. Apuzio and his wife were at the wedding, and I got to meet them.
How about that? They after all settled down, they came to Emmitsburg, and they came for a couple of years to help out as returning. Back then we called them returning survivors, but we now call them hero families. So just for those of you tuning in for the very first time, here we are again. We're live at FDIC. We want to let you know that the studio broadcast is brought to you by Firehouse Subs and the Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation. Enjoy more subs, save more lives, like they say. Find out more about the restaurant ownership. If you want to own one, Tom, you'd go out of business in 10 minutes because you'd eat the profits. We know that. But www.firehousesubfranchising.com. So with that, I want to officially welcome in Eric Gablix, the Superintendent National Fire Academy. Give us a couple of goings-on at the Fire Academy. What's the latest and the greatest, man?
Well, let's tie into the memory of Kevin and thousands of other firefighters that are honored in Emmitsburg on our campus at the National Fire Academy through the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. So last week we received the transfer of flags from the United States Capitol from the Congress. So all of those flags have been flown over the Capitol in Washington, D.C. They were passed off to Victor Stagnero, the Executive Director of National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, along with Dr. Lori Moore Merrill, the U.S. Fire Administrator, and each of those flags was transported up to the campus. Our students received them along with Bev Donlin, who both of you know, on behalf of the foundation. But those flags are now going to be held in the chapel, which is historic for a number of reasons. We'll come back to that. But we received those flags, and each of those American flags will be presented to the families of the fallen coming up to Emmitsburg in the first weekend in May. So Emmitsburg is hallowed ground. The National Fire Academy, I know, is near and dear to both of you. But I mentioned it's a historic campus because, before it became the National Fire Academy, it was St. Joseph's College. And during the battle in Gettysburg, the Army of the Potomac actually stayed on our campus. And after the battle in Gettysburg during the Civil War, the sisters treated the injured from both the North and the South. So what today we know as the National Fallen Firefighters Chapel, during the Civil War was actually a field hospital. So historic in that way, but historic today because each and every day on the campus, especially in the Memorial Plaza, we honor the sacrifices of brave men and women, structural firefighters, aircraft firefighters, military firefighters, wildland firefighters who died in the line of duty. So it's very humbling to work there. But also as the superintendent of the National Fire Academy, our mission is to make sure that we honor our commitment to never forget the fallen or their families, but also to learn the lessons that we can from each of those fatalities. And what can we do better as incident commanders, as people that do fire codes, as people that provide training, as people that do community risk reduction programs. So a special time of the year as we move into what we call Memorial Week on campus. But the other thing, we just have a lot of different things going on campus. So for listeners that don't know what we do, the National Fire Academy is your fire academy, but we don't have a burn building. We don't have a fire truck, but we are envisioned within America Burning to be the equivalent of a military service school where we develop our current and future leaders. So we are, if you will, the West Point of the American Fire Service. We reach about 8,000 students on campus every year through a variety of classes. And then we reach another 70,000 or so off campus through deliveries in our state-to-state partnership with our state fire training directors and also virtually. So a busy time of the year, and I'm just glad to be here with both of you.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. And the National Fallen Firefighters Memorial Weekend, which we do every year. I'm currently the incident commander for the weekend. Tommy Aurnhammer is the chief of operations, and we're both stepping aside this year in May. After this year, this is 25 years for me, and it's 25 Memorial weekends, and it's not just the weekend, as you know. It's just a year-round activity. We always say it's like the Macy's parade. They have the parade on Thursday, and Friday they're playing in next year's parade. That's what we're doing. We're having meetings. We're having command staff meetings. There's a million moving parts made up within the command structure. We got 25 individual units that are doing things all at the same time. Our job is to just conduct the orchestra, make sure it's all happening. So we're ready. We had our last planning meeting last week, as you know, and we're ready. And you know what? We couldn't do it without the help of the FEMA staff, the Fire Academy staff, and the people in Emmitsburg. So I think it's a great partnership in order to get it done, like they say.
And I would agree. And all of us, growing up in New Jersey, knowing Franklin Township and knowing where Kevin died in the line of duty, but all of us here know somebody who's on the wall, right? Either that we went to their funeral, we work with them, we work with somebody from their department. And what's interesting now, as I walk the campus every day and I'll stop at the memorial, we're seeing a transition of a military honor now at the memorial, which is people are leaving coins now on the plaque. So, that quarter means that they work with the person, the dime means that they knew the person, and the nickel means that they know of the incident. So again, we're tying together.
I wasn't aware of the difference in the change.
Yeah, there's a significance to the value.
I didn't hear that. No one's told me until you came along. So thank you for that.
Yes.
So we appreciate that. Thank you. So we're just gonna shift gears. We're gonna bring in another guest, a gentleman that I've known for a very long time. I just for the record, well, let me introduce you, and then I got something to say about what's happening here. This is kind of weird, but anyway, I want to bring in Chief John Alston. He's currently the chief in New Haven, Connecticut. Spent John 34 years in Jersey City. 31 years in Jersey City, New Jersey. We left there as an assistant chief of department, correct?
Deputy,
Yep, and then went to New Haven, Connecticut to be the chief of department. He's been there about 8 years.
That's correct.
And one thing he has not mastered was how to fix a boom on a microphone. We know
Hey,
that.
you know what? This used to be my job many moons ago.
Were you one of those?
I was on the other side of that
the
camera.
other side of the camera.
Yeah,
Huh?
we got
you
it
should
now.
be back on the other side of the camera.
Oh, here he goes.
Just saying.
You're going to start the comedian show now?
No, I'm going to wait 5 more minutes. But here's the interesting thing. Okay, Chief Alston is chief in New Haven, Connecticut. Tommy's a retired chief in Farmington, New Mexico. Eric is in Emmitsburg, and I'm in New York, and we're all Jersey guys.
That's
Go
it.
figure.
Go Jersey strong.
So, we got Jersey Strong here right about now, right?
And maybe the chief and I could be roadies for you after the show.
We could do
It's
that.
possible,
Right?
It's possible.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
So
Okay.
everybody's
We got it,
right.
Doctor.
This is great. So I wanted to talk a little bit about while we're at FDIC. I think it's prudent to talk about leadership. Leadership is always front and center. It's what you guys preach at the Fire Academy. It's what John writes extensively on it, lectures extensively on it. His shirt says leadership right on his shirt. And so I think let's just talk about how it's evolved. If we could talk about how leadership has evolved in the last, well, you're around fire service 40 years.
Correct.
Right? I think you're somewhere near that.
Yes.
I am, Tom.
Yes.
So we're all 40-year guys. I'm
Yeah.
a 49-year guy. So let's talk about maybe how it evolved. I'm going to start with you, Chief. And
Sure.
give us
So
some
I
of your
apologize
thoughts.
for my mode of dress. I just came out of the classroom. This is not what I had to plan to wear
I
today.
think you look wonderful today.
Oh, thank you. But you wear glasses too, and you
This
love
is true.
them, so there's a
And they're
difference.
very thick, and my prescription's up, so just don't worry about it.
What we talked about really upstairs was a lot of the leadership that we had in the fire service. The folks that had a mindset of stewardship were military people who not only served our country, but came back to continue to serve our country in a local way by joining our police forces and our fire departments. So a lot of our manuals, a lot of our the types of reports that we did, how we managed things, the stewardship of managing the station and the like, came from some very learned, very structured military folks. And so when I came to the fire service in 1985, it was show up, shut up, follow orders. If I want your opinion, I'll tell you what to think. We didn't, a grunt firefighter didn't talk to a chief officer ever. And you didn't answer back. You followed directions. And as the years have progressed, we've seen a change, not only in our communities, but now we've seen a change in our leadership. And so our styles have to change because now we have folks who don't have that memory. They don't have a frame of reference for a military style, a quasi or paramilitary organization. And so I've been focusing on the last 12 years on leadership styles in terms of making sure that I'm a good steward of passing that information down in a way that is manageable and the like. And you mentored me when I came from Jersey into Connecticut. It's a secret story. Nobody knows it, but I was in the running for the job. And my dear friend from Jersey and FDIC, Ron Kanterman, said, I want you to come up. And he introduced me to the past chief of the New Haven Fire Department and to his assistant chief. And we had lunch, and we were able to do that type of leadership handoff, if you will, that is so lacking in these days.
Yeah. And I think when you talked about the military side of things, and we don't have a lot of that now, and the fire departments, the fire chiefs around the country, they're looking for the military people, men and women, because they want that structure, because the average kid is really good at this. They got thumbs. They're all going to have arthritis by the time they're 30.
No.
In the thumbs. They'll have arthritis by the time they're 30 in the thumbs. But that kind of lends itself to the lack of that mechanical thinking and mechanical ability. Mm-hmm. We did interviews a couple of years back when I was the chief of Wilton, Connecticut. And my deputy, who you met that day at the lunch,
Correct.
He said, I want to ask a question on the interviewing panel. I said, what? He said, I want to ask the candidates, what was broken lately and what did you fix and how did you fix it? To see if they have any mechanical ability or adaptability. Mm-hmm. And, one kid came in and he said, well, the vacuum cleaner was busted. My mom was pulling the hair out. And then I flipped it over and the roller was full of hair. So I cleaned up the roller, took it apart, put it back together. Right? Is that a phenomenal thing? Not necessarily, but he had the foresight to do it and he had the ability. The next guy tore down and rebuilt the 58 Chevy with his buddy. We hired him right away. There was no question. Okay, you're hired, pal, and I want to ride in the car. But we took the kid who fixed the vacuum cleaner because he took that initiative to say, hey, Mom, let me see if I can fix your vacuum cleaner. Mm-hmm. And he was also he had a good background, came from a good home, and just we decided at that moment we want to bring good people into our fire department because every fire department has enough knuckleheads.
Sure. Well, you're
Everybody has knuckleheads. We don't want to hire more knuckleheads.
Yeah.
So you say this is a good kid. He's smart. went to college doesn't mean he's a genius, but it means he's trainable. He can learn.
Mhm.
The fact that he went to college. So let's bring good people into the fire department,
Sure.
not necessarily superstars.
So I look for the ones that the young people that we have now. They may not be able to fix things, but they have the hacker mentality, you know. And what I've found is where I came in with the do it because I said do it. The first time somebody asked me, well, why do we have to do it that way? I was a little put off until I looked at the frame of reference. They weren't really challenging me. They were really saying why.
They were seriously
It
curious,
was
right?
very serious. Why and why now?
Yeah.
And so it taught me to be a little bit more patient to find out, you know what, this may be a good candidate. That inquisitive nature double checked me too, you know, to make sure I knew what I was talking about.
Tommy, have you seen anything over your career? You know, you went to a couple different places too.
Yeah.
You know, Tommy was in Farmington, and then you went out to Colorado for a while, got the fresh mountain air,
Yes.
went back to New Mexico. So, I mean, what have you seen in your career?
You know, I'll be the first one to tell you, like, when I initially got promoted to captain, leadership was kind of a foreign concept out there. And I got to give the academy kudos for going through the executive fire officer program.
Absolutely.
And that's evolved from, we were the first group that had to do all 4 research papers. And we looked at a lot of different leadership models and stuff. But again, being that close to Gettysburg spurred my interest in looking at some of the battlefield stuff from leadership standpoints. And now that's part of the curriculum. Lawrence Chamberlain, probably one of my favorite studies during the battle. But I think we evolved, and Chief, you brought up a point of not questioning a chief officer. I can remember Battalion Chief Jack Ross in Milburn. When I discovered that the Forest Service had a procedure to turn down an assignment, all I could see is a picture of Jack
Exploding.
and pulling a piece of his boot out of my posterior. But we're getting better at it. And I think the up and coming generation, I'm actually kind of excited about, not only because
Well, I know why you're
I have
excited.
one.
Yeah, same here.
Tommy's got a new deputy chief living in his house right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my daughter tells me I have to call her chief now.
Oh, well, sharing it.
Yeah, good point. But I think the educational process has become more prevalent and is probably expected at this point.
So Sabine, you said that. Eric, so I'm going to go to you here because what you guys teach at the National Fire Academy in the leadership classes and EFO and the MOP class, has that evolved as well with the time?
Oh,
and all that stuff?
absolutely. And I'm gonna tie in, you know, Chief Alston's military kind of, if you will, connection to the fire service, because even today it's still a paramilitary operation, right? We have a chain of command, we have company officers, chief officers, but you know, today we tie in the lessons of the battlefield and executive fire officer from Gettysburg through the staff rank. So a lot of you know Chuck Burkell. Chuck is retired, did a great job for EFO for the National Fire Academy for many decades. But Chuck, when he retired, continued his studies of the battlefield and actually became a licensed Gettysburg battlefield guy.
Is that right?
Wow.
Yes, and to get that, you have to
Outstanding.
go through not only written tests, but also sitting in front of an oral board where they pepper you with questions about the battle so that you know your stuff. So we have Chuck come in and a few other Gettysburg battlefield guys if Chuck's not available. But in that second week of your final EFO class, you're going to go to the battlefield and go to the different battles. Because remember, it was just 3 days. Right. A lot happened in Gettysburg in 3 days, but there are so many leadership lessons learned more than 150 years ago that still play a role today. So we tie in the past, we tie in the military into today, but the executive fire officer program, EFO, we just did a refresh update of that program, really a total rebuild, not a refurb, but a rebuild. And we looked at 3 pillars of today's leader. And that first pillar is that the leader has to know themselves. Who are they? How do they think? You know, how do they react? How are they perceived? How do they communicate? That second pillar is they have to know their organization. Who are the men and women that they lead on a daily basis? Who do they represent? So that role that they play in the organization. And the third one is community, because the fire department, the fire rescue agency is not an island to itself. And all of us know that here.
Correct.
You are embedded in the community. Everybody knows who you are. Everybody knows what you do, and they expect you to show up and do your absolute best when the call comes in. So those three pillars are woven throughout the executive fire officer program. And again, there's a lot of leadership lessons learned there from the military, but there's also leadership lessons learned from the private sector. So it's not just learning from the fire service, but let's look broad about what those leadership lessons are. To tie in, Ron, to your comment, are we seeing a different workforce today than we were seeing 10 years ago? We are. Everybody will say that. We don't see the vocational skills that we've seen in the past. We have our new cadets saying, can you get me the screwdriver? Which kind, plus or a minus?
Right.
Well, that's a Phelps or a flathead, right?
Correct.
We knew that because we took both tech classes in high school. The newest one I heard last week from a fire officer class on campus is they had a student call it the IKEA tool. Well, the IKEA tool is an Allen wrench. Right?
IKEA tool.
The IKEA tool is the Allen wrench.
That's great.
But what we realize as leaders, and this is what we kind of weave into the leadership discussions in the classes, and all of us are doing that because we're all mentoring people.
Sure.
Even though we have new recruits, new cadets, whatever we want to call them, we're still mentoring them. And it may not be chief officers, but that academy drill master, that captain at the academy. And I know I'm not alone when I say this, but more than once that I hear in the recruit academy, Mr. Gablix, you're going to ruin the fire service. And I have a feeling that all of you heard that at some point during your career. And I think we turned out okay. But we look at this new generation, they need mentors. They want structure. They want to they want to serve their community.
Correct.
Maybe in different ways than we did,
Right.
but they just need to be asked. They need to be guided.
Right.
And Chief Alston, to your comment, if we don't answer their question, they're going to go somewhere else.
All right.
And it may not be the answer that we want. And what we also know with this generation, and Chief Kanterman, you said this, right? That device is attached to their hands.
Right.
That's just the reality of
The
today's
new
world.
appendage.
Right. It's a new appendage. And we have the acronym GTS, Google that stuff.
Right.
If you don't answer it, they're going to Google it. And they may not find the right answer there. In fact, it may be counterintuitive to the safety and health culture that we're trying to put in place.
Therein lies the problem.
Yes.
So if they don't hear it from us,
Yes.
they're going to go somewhere else and maybe get the wrong answer.
Yes.
Right.
Or not the answer that we want them to have.
Exactly.
That's right.
So I think it's prudent that we change our methodology.
Absolutely.
And we change our thought processes
Sure.
to go back to teaching the young people coming into the fire service.
Yeah.
Here's what you need. And if you have questions, ask us. And we'll do the best we can to
Yes.
answer that question. And we'll get back to you if we don't have it right away.
The
So it's
the
key.
podcast that was on before us with Mikey D and Mikey G. Mikey G used one of my favorite quotes of the best thing an old firefighter can teach a young firefighter is how to become an old firefighter.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we talk about the tools and the mechanical skills, right? They don't know that there's oil and gas in a saw, right? So we have to teach them that. But we're also, as we talk to our students coming into classes, because on Fridays, what I love about Fridays is we can read negative things online about the fire service and what's wrong with it. But what I love, and I think all of us see this, is the passion of our current and future leaders for the job, right?
Sure.
For serving others. So you go in and listen to what departments are doing, innovations across the country. But some of them have identified that they have to add life skills to their recruit school now.
Yeah.
Things that we never thought about. But we're hiring people that have never done their own laundry. They've never cooked a meal, right? So we're seeing fire academies across the country as we embrace health and wellness, bringing in nutritionists as part of recruit school, and helps them create a healthy meal for the crew. The same is true, and we're not alone in the fire service. We've had similar discussions with our military partners, but they're adding life skills to their boot camps. Kids that have never done their own laundry because they've lived at home.
I think it's the South Carolina State Fire Academy. The recruits live at the academy Monday to Friday, I believe, and they go home on the weekends.
Okay.
But they're living in a firehouse.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a great setup. They have a firehouse with apparatus, bunk room, the kitchen, the whole bit.
That's
They
great
take turns.
indoctrination.
It's like this is real firehouse life.
Yes.
It's either for you or it's not for you.
Yeah.
So and on top of teaching them those skills like making your bed, cleaning up the firehouse, cooking, cleaning up the dishes, and all that other stuff. They turn them out 3 o'clock in the morning to fires in
Yes.
the burn building. You know,
Yeah.
they get them out of bed. You know, if you're that kid that's got to have you 15 hours a night, and you don't like getting up out of bed in the middle of the night, it's like this isn't for me.
Dr.
You know, we got in New York, 10% of the probate class doesn't finish.
Mhm.
So we recently
And that's okay.
yeah,
That's okay.
right.
Yeah.
That's the time.
Yes.
That's the time
Yes.
that you want to find that out.
Yes.
You know, and so the last group came in the door. It was 335 of them, and I think there's 305 right now.
Yeah.
You know, 30 in about a month or so. So, but that's okay. That's what probate school's for.
Yeah.
Yeah, the doctor
Yeah.
reminded me of a story. I was a single engine captain, and a young man was coming in to mop up, and I could smell the mop. And I looked at the floor and I said, "Hey, you got to rinse that mop." "Oh, okay, Cap." He goes, he takes that dirty mop, puts it back into that dirty water, rinses it, comes right back into the office and smelling it. I said, no, you probably need a new mop head.
Mhm.
"Okay, Cap." He goes, gets the new mop head.
Puts it in the
He
dirty
goes up, I
water.
stopped him. I said, and I asked the question. I said, "Have you ever mopped the floor before?" And he thought, he says, "Yeah, I think so." I said, "No, really, have you ever mopped the floor before?" I said, "No." He said, "In our house, we only had rugs. I've never." No. I said, "Even in the kitchen?" He goes, "Oh, my mom does that."
Right.
So no one, here's a kid, a young person, 25, 26 years old, who had never mopped the floor.
The kid with the vacuum cleaner will clean the hair out.
Yeah.
Okay. He grew up in this is an exclusive area of Connecticut I worked in. You know where I worked. He grew up 2 towns over.
Okay.
Okay. I think his dad was a big time physician. His mom was in the medical field. Big, huge house. Kid, silver spoon, right? And so he comes to get same thing. Comes to us, and we train him in the whole bit.
Right.
And on Fridays they clean the staff cars. My car, deputy chief's car, fire marshal's car. That's Friday. It's on the task list. So they tell him, "Okay, kid, clean the chief's car." I go out 2 hours later. It's about lunchtime. I said, "I guess they didn't get to it." You know, so it was dirtier than one before they washed it. So I go in the kitchen. I says to the captain, "You didn't get to the cars this morning?" He goes, "No, we did everything." I says, "Come with me." Looked at, he went, "Wow." And he said, "The car looks dirtier than before." He said that. I said, "I just said that." I said, "Who washed the car?" He told me, I'll just say Smith. No names, Smith. I said, "You know where he grew up. You know where he comes from. Ask him because at 17 he got a brand new Mercedes and he put a $30 bill at the car wash once a week and they would do it for him."
Sure.
I says, I bet he never washed the car in his life. And I said, "Go ask him." And he came back and he said, "Chief, he never washed the car in his whole life." And so I said, "All right, well then teach him how to do it so
That's
it looks
the
decent."
key.
You know,
That's the key, and that's one of those teaching moments where
yeah. As mundane as it sounds, as ridiculous that sounds, but it's still it sets the pattern for the thinking
Yes.
for that
Sure.
young man.
Sure.
You know,
And I would add that's that transition in leadership. We have to reinvent how we communicate with our workforce,
Yes.
whether we're career or volunteer, chief officers, company officers, union presidents, volunteer association presidents. We still are doing the same work, but we have to communicate with those that are coming into organizations differently. So that's a challenge. Some people may say this is not what I signed up for, but that's the reality we're in today. They want to serve.
It's interesting you say that because I had a chat with the chief of training in the city, and we were talking about this. Somehow it came up, and he said, "Ron," he said, we believed that the new recruits coming in, the phone is part of the hand, the new appendage, right?" He says, "We thought that." He says, "But we swung the pendulum so far in that direction." He says, "They weren't getting what they needed with using the phone. They got iPads and all that stuff." He says, "We pulled it back. We pulled the pendulum back to the middle and put them in the burn building more than they put them on their phone." He said, "Because that's the thinking now is everything's technology.
Gotta
Technology.
balance.
Yeah. Does it have its place? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But in the business we're in, they got to be crawling around the burn building for a while, right?
Yeah.
So not that they weren't doing it, but it swung the other way.
And I don't want the younger generation of firefighters thinking that we're here like browbeating them.
No,
not at all.
I want to tap into that
Yes,
energy
absolutely.
and that curiosity that they have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One
I
of
love it.
One of the things I discovered after I got promoted in Farmington, I was worried about the generational gap of having a 50-year-old battalion chief and a 20-year-old recruit getting in a fist fight over what they're going to watch on television. So
No.
we actually had a consultant come in and we did a values study, and it was eye-opening
Mhm.
because the same core values permeated the organization. Everybody had those. The difference we discovered was how do you motivate them
Mm.
to get the job done?
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and I would build on your comment, and also John's about the generation coming in. We need them, and
Yeah,
we need
yeah.
their tech savvy, because as we walk around the show floor here at FDIC, I mean, whoever thought we would have drones on incident scenes?
Yeah.
Right.
Right? We
Yeah.
need somebody who knows how to fly those. Look at the technology. Look at our hazmat. Look at our EMS provision.
Sure.
The technology is part of it, and
Sure.
those folks, we need to embrace them because they love that stuff.
Yeah.
You know, we grew up in an era where you listen to the pump with your ear.
Absolutely.
Right,
I
and
still
now
do.
you have the technology you want to engage in, and they're ready for that. So I would say we bend, but we don't break. Nobody is saying let's lower the standards for what it takes to be a firefighter,
Correct.
but how we get there is
Well,
different.
it's striking a balance.
Yes.
That's the hard part.
Yeah.
You know, for guys like us
Mhm.
and those our peers and colleagues,
Mhm.
is striking a balance.
Right.
In trying to figure out what we can pull from it. Like I said, we swung the pendulum so far the other way
Mhm.
that they're pulling it back now and say, wait a minute. So yeah, but we're going to make those mistakes. We're going to make those, but you got to course correct, and then you move forward.
Correct.
I agree. I'd like to cover something. Just general leadership on and off the fire ground.
Mhm.
On and off the fire ground. The discipline of the fire and the importance of that, and how that's evolved a little bit too. Our people don't get in trouble on the fire ground as much as they get in trouble in the firehouse.
Yes.
And I think you'll agree to
Yes.
that, right?
I agree.
So how do we temper the firehouse, and then of course lead it to the fire ground? And I'll just throw in that if you're dysfunctional in the firehouse, you're dysfunctional on the fire ground.
Mhm.
And my favorite story about that is Cal Ripken. And I asked a class recently who never heard of Cal Ripken, and 3/4 of the hands went up, right?
Right.
And we know he was the next Iron Horse. After Lou Gehrig played 3,000 plus games, never missed a day, blah blah blah, right? And I said, while Cal Ripken was doing that, and the whole world was watching him, the Baltimore Orioles sucked because when they traveled, he wouldn't have a roommate, and he stayed in a different hotel from the rest of the team. And that dysfunction off the field
Mhm.
made them dysfunctional on the field. In the firehouse, it's life and death. You're
Absolutely.
dysfunctional in the firehouse. You get out to a job. That old baloney, that old bullcrap statement about, well, I don't talk to Eric's, but at a fire I got his back. That's
Right.
bullshit.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'm throwing the bullshit for you because it is. It is. If I really dislike this guy and he gets jammed up, yeah, maybe I'll give him a hand, or maybe I'm going the other way. Who the hell knows, And I hate to talk like that, but it's a fact. It's human nature.
one of the things that kind of struck me was situational leadership and how to apply that to different situations. Now, in the firehouse, we're going to be a lot more participative because you got time. You want to make sure everything's running smoothly. You want input from the troops. But then you look at what's going on the fire ground. That is not the place to have a committee meeting to figure out how you're going to solve the problem.
Sure.
I agree.
So you got to be a little more definitive and maybe a little bit of a stronger leader when you're in those situations.
Yeah, and I think if you look at our industry, career volunteer, we have 1.2 million people approximately in the United States that serve communities as firefighters. Now that varies based on the size of the community, the type of services provided,
Sure.
but we're there for a purpose, which is to be community caretakers. During an emergency, we need to know what to do. We need to get there and be effective and efficient. But the other part of that is that we also set the tone as leaders on the culture of that fire department.
Correct.
So and I think a lot of you have heard this in the past, but Gordon Graham, what you permit, you promote, right?
That's correct.
So if you allow this to happen and you don't address that with the crew, what do you think is going to happen at a fire ground? And while we call it the firehouse, we have to also remember it's still the workplace, right? So those rules don't stop for harassment, for hazing, for all those things that people get in trouble for when you come to the firehouse. This is a job.
But that goes back to the leadership that sets the
Absolutely.
tone. And when we talk about culture, the principles of culture are how people think, act, and react. It's bare bones. So if you're sitting there and you're charged with the responsibility of leadership and you're allowing it, like Gordon says, what you permit, you promote,
Right.
then there's no accountability for the members and there's no accountability for that first line supervisor. So goes the first line supervisor, so goes the culture, so goes the service, because they have 100% contact with the public, 100% contact with the crew and the equipment and the facility. And you can be the chief of department. You represent nothing unless they're passing that fire station and they're being respected and served. And so it's our job to cultivate that and support those that step up, but also to be able to step in and discipline those when they don't.
Yes.
So that we have their backs as well.
And I have always said the most important person in our department is that company officer.
Agreed.
They are the ones on a daily basis that shape that fire station, that crew. And also, if that company officer is bumping it up to the battalion chief or the deputy chief to handle, then I've had the discussion that exactly what are you doing? Right?
You must have been in my class. We just had that.
The reason why I'm smiling while you said that is Bobby Hoff, who became the fire commissioner eventually in Chicago, and then retired. And of course, we stuck at retirement, so he got another job being a chief somewhere else in Illinois. But Bobby Hoff was I think he was a captain, and he came here and he did a keynote on the stage at FDIC. And his platform that day was the officer in the right front seat moves the fire service.
Yes.
Agreed.
Yes.
And
Both good and bad.
I was in the back. Yeah,
Yes.
I was in the back room.
Yes.
I was in the green room, and all the big guys were there. Bruce Sweeney was there. Tommy Brennan was a lot. They were all there. And they're throwing the bullshit flag the whole time he's up. He did a great job. But they're saying, nah. One of the chiefs said, we get the 5 horns, the 5th horn's the heaviest one to carry, and all that stuff. It was very, very moving. But he come off the stage and he came in the back, and with good-natured ribbing, the Chiefs were standing there. They were clapping for him, and then they went, no, we're going to boo you instead. And it was good
Sure.
banter.
It's all love. Yeah.
So my jury's out, and I'm flying home at the end of the week. I have an epiphany on the plane. Bobby was right. Bobby was absolutely right. So I called him, and first 5 times I called him, I hung up on him on purpose. Is Bobby Hoff yet? Click. Then I finally, who is this? And I said, I called to tell you you're right. He said, who is it? I said, it's Ron Kanterman. He said, right about, what am I right about? I'm never right. I said, what you said on the stage last week. I said, the officer, the guy or gal in the right front seat, who's the fire service, the decisions they make, they're the first ones on the scene.
So goes
Chief
the
is
first
getting
line,
in.
so goes the fire.
Right, the 5 minutes, the next 5 hours kind of thing. But it's true. They're making those snap decisions as soon as they pull up. Yeah, chiefs may be 5-10 minutes out, depends on where you are. Some chiefs are a half hour out, depending. Right, that officer, and not just for the fire ground,
Right.
but everything else.
Yes. Yeah.
I did the Everyone Goes Home program for a career department in New Jersey, probably 20 years ago. 3 nights in a row, 3 shifts. It's a 3-shift system. The first night, the deputy chief shows up. Okay, it's a hot night in summer. Okay, it's 7 o'clock class. He's wearing a white undershirt that you wear under a dress shirt, blue work pants that will wash 10,000 times so they're purple, and sneakers. What do you think the rest of his shift looked like? They looked just like him. They looked like a bunch of bums.
Yeah.
And then I said, oh, it's going to be a long night. And it was a long night. Okay. So at that point, the next night I come in and I go, okay, this is what this department's made of, because we're talking about culture.
Sure.
And the deputy walked in, and he looked like he was out of central casting. Some Hollywood director calls it, some of your battalion chief or a deputy chief. This guy walked in, you can cut your finger on the crease on his pants. His hair was combed, shirt right to here, the whole bit. What the shift looked like? It looked just like him, man. It was the yin and the yang, man.
Right.
And it was a perfect lesson in leadership, and so goes leader, so goes the people. So with that, this time went by very quickly. I can't thank you guys enough. Eric, thank you for being here. John,
Thanks
always
for
a
the invite,
pleasure.
brother. Same
And
here.
my brother Tom,
We'll be on the back step again next month.
we'll be on the back step next month. Yeah, we're working on another special guest. I don't know how much more special we can get than we are now. But
Too kind.
You're very kind.
guest Eric Dablix, the Superintendent National Fire
It's an
Academy.
honor.
John Alston, Chief of Department in New Haven, Connecticut.
Pleasure.
With that, we'll say what we always say. Be careful, wear your seatbelt, buckle up, slow down, stop to red, use your head. And when you hug your kids and your wife and husband at night, whoever you're hugging, hold them tight, tell them you love them all the time. With that, it's the Backstep Boys, and we're about done.
Stay safe, everybody.
See ya.
Solid. Be well. See you out there.
Thank you. Come to the national.